Well, hi again, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. I'm Craig Hamilton Parker. I'm a psychic medium, and on this show, we talk about all the things that are happening in the world and try to see it through our psychic eyes, as it were, make some predictions. And there's a lot of predictions in this particular show for us today. And in this particular edition, I'm taking some of your questions about what's happening in the world. And I've tried to give you some of my insights, some of my thoughts as well, and also some of my predictions about the future. So, welcome to Coffee with Craig. Well, thanks for joining the show again. And if you're here for the first time, please remember to subscribe because I'm guaranteed you'll love this show. But you'll also enjoy the comments and make your comments as you go through this because this has become a bit of a community. And guys, if you're here often, please, every time, if you don't mind, just give us a thumbs up so that it helps the algorithm tremendously. Well, today's theme is about some of the things that are happening in the world generally. And I've been thinking a lot about the prospects of what war is like, because we've got these huge, great displays going on at the moment in China and Russia and North Korea, all holding hands and shaking a fist at the West, really. And it makes you think a lot. And I particularly thought a lot about this because I'm very interested in history, and I found recently a photograph of my granddad as a young boy signing up to go to the First World War, and it makes me think a lot about history, modern history as well as ancient history. And they say that if we don't learn from history, then it repeats itself. And the big horror today, I think, is that there's an agenda to change history as well, to make it seem that all the great achievements of the past, all the great achievements of the British Empire, for example, all the rise of Europe and the rise of the industrial revolutions in the West, the huge power that developed in the USA and that go get it attitude, all those things are bad things. Any patriotism for our countries is a bad thing. The West was wrong. And instead, we see the rise of China. And I was looking at that picture of my granddad, and it really made me think. I mean, I did a AI animation of it using Grok, and you'll see from the picture of him that he's just a young boy going to war. Born in 1901, and the First World War began in 1914. And he joined quite close to the start of the war. So in that picture, he's something like 14 or 15 years old. He joined underage. He said to me when I was a boy, he said, all I wanted to do, Craig, was fight Germans. I just wanted to kill Germans, which is awful, we might think nowadays. Of course it was. Wars are terrible things. And the First World War and Second World War destroyed the power of Britain, for example, ultimately, slowly and gradually. But was his patriotism wasted? I asked myself. I mean, in his case, there he was on the station about to be packed off to the front, to the First World War front. He would have never made it. And the drill sergeant spotted him there, and he knew that he'd applied too young. So he pulled him out of the queue and he said, right, you're in the Ordnance Corps or whatever it was called then. You're going off to map Nigeria. And he went and he was sent off to map Nigeria, which was an incredibly difficult thing for a young boy like that. He reminds me of my granddad children. Actually, he's got the facial looks of that. But I thought, could at that age any of us been packed off to Nigeria? He was the only one that actually came back, actually, from all of the teams that were sent out there. He was one of the few that actually made it. One or two became alcoholics, one or two committed suicide, and some of the others died, because Nigeria at that time, as was the whole of Africa, was a completely wild place with very little cities or anything like that at the time. He was mapping places where people from the West had not gone. Actually, I'm going off, but it is an interesting story. And he had a very strong influence upon me and my interest in India and things like that, So there we go. And, he told me lots of things about what Africa was like in those times. And it does not correspond in the slightest with what they're being taught in school in these Black History Months, which, I'm nothing against anybody or any cultures, but, we're getting a wrong view of history now. And so I'm very interested in AI. I was very interested that those videos were done by using Grok, which is Elon Musk's new one. Absolutely brilliant. And millions of people are signing up for it because it's free at the moment. But what an incredible thing it did with that picture of my granddad. And that's why I'm thinking a lot today about war and things like that. And of course, as you know, I'm really interested in AI at the moment because I'm developing with a team, and some substantial money's been put into this now, to develop what's called Craig's Oracle, which is a new oracle for will help you interpret the future. It won't be psychic, but it's fascinating how it's going, and we're testing it at the moment. Some of the patrons are getting to test it, so if you have a look, if you're in the patrons there, you might be able to get on the tester list, and if you want to be some of the first, because we'll only allow a few to sort of open it up to a few at a time, get on my mail list before it goes public. Have a look in the description below for the AI Oracle part, and you can join that. Anyway, we're taught that it's a bad thing, the march towards the modern era. The era was built in the mills of Britain, wasn't it? The era was built British Commonwealth, the factories of Europe and the industries of the USA. All that brought our modern age. But now we have the crazy educationalists are kind of rewriting our history. Do you think so? And suggest that, it was built entirely on the back of Africa, and the African civilizations built this future, the world we have today. It was founded on the bedrock of weird liberal ideas and cross-dressers, and those were the bedrock of our society. We're twisting and changing history. We should not do that, because we must learn from history, particularly when we see what's happening in China at the moment with all these great marches going on. Have we forgotten what happened in Europe? Have we forgotten what happened in Russia and Brezhnev and all that lot? And Western civilization, yes, we built our civilization on terrible wars. It's true. But from them emerged the modern age, and it was a hard birth. Or from it also emerged the humanitarian values that we have today, and the democracies that we have today that allow all the twits to talk, as well as the right wing and the left wing and the rest of it. It's very important, and we're being undermined, I think, and we're told to be ashamed of our countries. And while China is marching forward and it steals all our inventions, steals all our data, misuses and pinches all our copyrights, and now parades itself as a great power towards the world. So we need to change our thinking. Is the West done for? It could be, it could be if we're not careful. And although what I'm talking about now is not necessarily a prediction for the future, can we not sense the spirit of the age and where it's going? And are we not a little bit scared about where it's going? And can we do anything about it? So I think As Gandhi said, we first got to change the minds of the people before we can change the world. That's the thing. The most difficult thing to change, Sai Baba said, is the human heart. But somehow we've got to do that. We've got to come back to what are our real values, and particularly what are our real Western values. Do we really feel that our society is being enriched by many of the things that are coming into our societies at the moment? Or are these things more of a poison? Or can we learn from it? Can we grow from it? Can we integrate stuff just as we did in the past? But, it's a difficult time. Anyway, I'm going to move on now and make some of my predictions, because I know that's what many of you have been waiting for. So here are some of my predictions. All of the predictions today are based upon questions that you've sent in. So this has come in particularly through the patrons and through the YouTube members, but also some of the ones that I put on the posts. So always keep an eye open for the posts and put your questions when you see one pop up, or if you're a member or you're a patron, always keep sending me your questions, because they're very inspiring and they help me to make a good program. What is your take on the military marches in China? Well, the military marches in China are, of course, something that I think should be of concern to us all. And the thing that I found almost amusing was the way that the Chinese Communist Party made such a fuss about how they won the Second World War, hand in hand with Russia and possibly even North Korea if we stretch it even further. But they didn't win the war against Japan. They didn't. It was the Chinese people that won the war against Japan. It wasn't the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, it was the Chinese nationalists, the ones that won, those that were pushed out and down into Taiwan. So they're taking credit for another party's actions. But of course, we mustn't underestimate the terrible suffering that the Chinese people went through, the awful battles that happened there in China, and the millions of people that were killed, and the terrible atrocities that happened. But it wasn't the Chinese Communist Party that made that great achievement, what they're marching about today. So I also have warned about the dangerous alliance already that will emerge between China and Russia, and the new axis of evil, particularly that we have. India is also involved there, but I don't see India staying part of that alliance for very long. But they are kind of a bit compromised in many respects, because they have the oil coming in from Russia, which they need, and the armaments that they've bought from Russia, which they need, and the parts of those things that they need. And also, they've been snubbed by Trump. So the whole thing with India being there is a bit of a poke in the eye back to Trump, saying, "Hey, look, we can choose our sides. You better treat us a bit better. We don't want all these tariffs that you put upon us." But it's a bit of a wake-up call, all of this, really, for the West, because we cannot, from what Modi's saying to us here, rely on the fact that an Indian democracy won't side with the forces that are rising in China, and I think they're getting bedfellows with a very dangerous party there, because I think China one day will give India a kick, and it could be very dangerous for India in the future if they're not careful. And this is talking a long way ahead, but I feel that India will become a very powerful country in due course, and I've spoken about this before, and China won't like that, and Russia won't either. And this could be you're getting in with dangerous bedfellows, Modi. You've given Trump the message, and you also didn't like the fact that he claimed victory for the peace in Pakistan, with Pakistan. That was India's doing, not really America's doing. So there we go. So there's dangerous ways ahead, is my take on this. A prediction for this? Well, I'm reminded of my earlier predictions on this, and I've said already that in time, Xi Jinping will fall from power, and that China will break into multiple nations. So these are the things I've already said. And this is all, like I say, history opens slowly. The events of history don't happen instantly. But this shows, in many ways, this show of power will bind China together for the short term. But for now, that will happen. But I still feel an economic downturn will happen in China, which will eventually destroy the Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Party. And I see this actually fully happening in 2030. That will be an important turning point. But there will be moves before that too that could succeed. We're not stuck with milestones like this. Although these things are set and these things are set to happen, we can bring things forward or push them further back. But I feel that 2030 is going to be an important turning point for China. Major disruptions at that time. So remember also, we've got free will. So nothing is set in stone. But that's my thoughts about China and where it's going. And that's my thoughts initially about some of the military marches that are happening in China. Very dangerous. I think we should pay a lot of attention to it. President Xi Jinping did not look well at the military parade. I think he has to fight hard to stay in power. What do you see here? Okay, there's another question from one of the patrons. I've mentioned a bit about China already in the main video here, but I sense that Xi Jinping has an underlying health condition. And it's something quite serious that has been kept at bay for a while. It's something like cancer. It could be prostate or something like that. Something that's a slow acting cancer that can be dealt with up to a point. But I feel that he's got a hidden illness. And many of the people that are surrounding him know of this and are circulating him like vultures smelling the corpse. I also think that Putin also masks a health condition. He obviously keeps himself extremely fit with all his exercises that he does. It goes far too far sometimes, riding around in horses and carrying machine guns and so forth. But I think there's also something with him. I think he has a heart issue of some sort, and that might be a trigger for future things. You think about it, if Xi Jinping was gone and Putin was gone, although horrible forces would probably replace them, at the moment they're absolutely at their height of their power, aren't they? But I think they've got very subtle enemies, both of them, who are even now, as we speak, trying to undermine him. It's very hard at the moment because there's a nationalistic sense of pride in China. And there should be a sense of pride in China also for the huge achievements that they're making, apart from the damage to the West, that they are making pretty huge achievements and are very intelligent and brilliant people. But imagine them with democracy, where they could go. But there's some dangerous things going on in the background there, a more dangerous weaponry there than I think there's been on display. And I think this is, although this is a shake of the fist at Trump's tariffs and the American dominance of the world, I do feel that there's underlying weakness there. And also, when you come to these powers, you can make all these displays, but the Chinese have never actually been in full combat in a war. How would those military marches and displays of almost dance-like military displays, how would they fare in a military conflict? Let's pray to God it never happens. But at the moment, we have 2 or 3 very dominant totalitarian type figures there. But I'm often reminded when I see these things of what Gandhi said about these things. He said, when I despair, I remember that all through history, the ways of truth and love have always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they can seem invincible, but in the end, they always fall. Think of it, always. Now, I think, could you fault Gandhi with what he said there? And in other things, in other quotes he said too, he said, but, the tyrants fall. But he also pointed to how India persisted through centuries and actually managed to keep its values throughout, even through invasions and the damage that was done by the Moguls, the damage that was done by the British and the rest of us. The right values, things persist. So it's very important, just like he said also, we've got to change the heart, not just change the political agenda. So my prediction on this one for your question is that before the end of 2026, Xi Jinping will have been removed from power. Another question from one of the patrons. Will the US dollar decline and a global backed currency emerge? If so, what is the timeline? It's helpful and relevant to your followers all over the world to know the potential for gold-backed currency to replace fiat money, because it would significantly impact our financial security, economic behavior, and trust in institutions. i.e., please give me a prediction so I can get my investments right, Craig. Okay. So quite a complicated question there from one of our patrons, but my thoughts on this first. The dollar's global dominance is eroding, but it's eroding slowly. It's not collapsing. Central banks are buying sort of record amounts of gold and experimenting with new payment rails. But a true gold-backed global currency replacing today's fiat system in the next decade, I think, is unlikely. Probably what's more plausible is a sort of a messy, multipolar system, more sort of local currency trade. Gold as a bigger reserve, with gold as a bigger reserve anchor. So I would suggest expect gold to matter more as a reserve anchor and as a hedge, but not to be the legal basis of a new global currency very soon. The dollar's grip is loosening, not breaking. Gold is back as a backstop, but not as a new master. So those are the thoughts about that. As a prediction, I would suggest, I predict that the next money system will be digital, faster, and multipolar, not a strict gold standard. So if that helps you with any of your investments, right at the present point in time, the value of gold is going high, I believe. But also when we have uncertainty in the world, when we see the rise of military forces and coalitions between the East, obviously people worry about investments and gold becomes stronger. So I've always said that long term, I would always suggest to people, you always have some of your investments put into things that you've actually got tangible assets for. Cryptocurrencies and things like this are good for short-term investments, can make sudden improvements in your life, but it's a bit like gambling. I always think it's good to have your money, as my grandma used to say to me, put your money in bricks and mortar. And although property prices are all over the place sometimes, bricks and mortar ultimately survive, as does, I suppose, gold up to a point. Anyway, always you want something to see for your investment. I think it's perhaps a layman's way of approaching these things, but it's common sense too, isn't it? Well, the next question in from the patrons and some of the YouTube members, and don't forget to look out again for the posts that I put up if you've got your questions. It says, is this immigration crisis a form of asymmetric warfare waged against the West by possibly China and Russia? Now, we have one major immigration crisis, as you all know. It's on our doorsteps. Here where I live in Hampshire in the UK, we've got things going on in Bournemouth, we've got things going on in Portsmouth, both sides. To the north of us, we've got things going on in London. I mean, there are serious upsets about migration, and I've said all along that I feel that this is not just being coincidental. The hidden powers, as it were, have been pushing migration into our country. You think who benefits from it? Foreign powers such as Russia benefit from it. It's already been shown that they divert migrants into Europe. Come on, guys, you're welcome through. Let's push you over the border. Similarly, we've seen the same thing happening when the crisis was happening in the borders with Mexico and the USA. There were many Chinese amongst those people flooding into America's southern border. It was seemed odd. Why were Chinese people amongst all these crowds? Again, encouraging things to happen. And it also benefits a lot of people when you think about it too. Political parties in the short term, such as Tony Blair, for example, could really benefit by having a sudden influx of new cultures and new people, because they were young people. If you didn't have your baby boom going on, you had to import them. So you bought in a baby boom, and for a short time, you can do politically very well. And this has been the ongoing thing. It's kind of, we can't not have these people here. We need our slave labor, because that's more or less what it is. We need people working in a black economy, because otherwise the fruit won't get picked and the potatoes won't get dug up, and all the other things that come in, which they mask as being cultural enrichment, but ultimately causes more chaos in the society. And I know that the person that posted this question, because I know you're a patron, and I know that you've normally got and have had very strong left-wing politics, because you mentioned it in other posts, and you've had that for many years. But I also feel there's a similar agenda to undermine our education system, and this is coming from the far left, the liberal views that have been misused. Divide and conquer is the touchstone. When you see these migrant protests going on, as I've said in my other videos, you can go and download and print these posters out to carry at your you can carry at your marches. You can download them, print them off from communist-based websites, Communist Worker Party newspapers, and so forth. I showed the videos I've showed the pictures of that last week. So, and this is all about divide and conquer, and in education in particular, we can get at them quite easily. Let's encourage these liberal lefty ideas and disempower the young boys, the young white boys. We don't want any resources going to them or encouragement going to them. Let's disempower them. Let's put foreign faces all over the Open University adverts. Say, oh, you can get on too. But meanwhile, you can't win, you can't succeed, because you've got white skin, therefore you've got an advantage already. And consequently, we're seeing a division made in society right from a young age. So it means we can win the short-term war, and we can win the long-term war too. And I think a lot of this, as well as being the fault of multicultural, multinational companies that want to get cheap labor, and governments that want to get cheap labor and a short-term boost so we can stay in power, but also they're rubbing their hands in China, and they're rubbing their hands in Russia and other places, and Iran as well, and places like that. Let's encourage this. Let's give money to the organizations that can cause this undermining. Let's see if we can help people on somehow who we want to get into education to undermine these things. So we've recently had so many migrant protests in the UK, but we've also seen them in Europe. We've also seen them in Australia, and even in Japan. Which Japan also kind of nowadays follows Western values. And all around, we're seeing it, these destructive migrant problems, which is dividing our societies. So why are these things never mentioned in the mainstream news? They're hardly mentioned at all. And so have foreign forces also compromised our media here? I mean, I went on Russian TV. I've forgotten what it's called now, but they used to have one here in the UK, and they were very nice people that I was dealing with, who was dealing with the actual filming of me. But when my predictions that I made were actually put onto Russian TV, and I got somebody to translate the Russian into English, what I was saying and what was being said on the Russian TV were far apart. I was making predictions that were really they're saying about the fall of the West and how the West was wrong, which was not what I was saying. So there was an example what I came across directly of seeing how foreign forces, in this case Russia, were using what I was saying, using my content, as it were, to predict the downfall of the West, which is not what I was saying. You know, it had been twisted slightly. It had been just tweaked just enough to make it sound different to what I was saying. And God knows what will happen when AI starts taking over and you can use an avatar of some sort to have me saying things and everybody else saying things, astrologers saying things and so forth that are completely wrong. I mean, they did it in Germany in the war. They used to twist the prophecies of Nostradamus to make it sound that, you know, Germany was right and Germany would win, and so on. And it's been used all throughout history. Napoleon did it too, even using prophecies to suggest that Napoleon would be the one that was the right force that would save Europe. So we get this all the time, and we're getting it now. And propaganda, of course, is one of Putin's great skills, because he came out of the KGB, didn't they? So there's all these problems going on, and I see, and I've said this in my other videos, major troubles ahead with this, I'm afraid, and particularly, and I've said this before, in France, because I see a huge political shift in France very soon. It's happening soon in France, and you'll recall that in my 2025 predictions, I saw gunfights in Marseille. If you go back and look at my 2025 predictions from October 2024, and this happened, I think it was yesterday. And could this be some marker of some sort that my unconscious mind spotted that gave me that flashpoint, as it were, that there will be more to come in France soon? You recall I said I saw Paris on fire. Could that be symbolic? Because we did have some fires in Paris, major fires in Paris, but could it also be symbolic? Because, you know, when I get these predictions, particularly the ones I make at the beginning of each year, I see it in a visual, almost dreamlike way sometimes when I do those very deep dives into it. But could this be a flashpoint right now for those things that I was seeing there? So my prediction for this one: in the coming weeks, we will see some massive protests about migration. It will be in London, but I also see terrible riots in Paris. It is coming very soon. Well, another question posed to me, this time from the public, as it were, rather than from the patrons or from the YouTube members. And this was quite an interesting one that someone said. It says, several of your predictions are coming true. Meghan is beginning to talk about a third child, although she claims Harry wants one. Also, President Trump is bringing back paper ballots. Right again. Will Meghan have another baby? So there you go. That's interesting. I mean, these are things from the 2025 predictions I made in October 2024 again. So right from the start, I've said that Meghan would be the downfall of Harry. Unfortunately, I did say that right when they were getting married. And I think people were sort of sneering at my videos at that, saying, oh, this is such a good development for the royal family. You know, we can, multiculturalism is being seen in the royal blood, and that's a good thing to see. And I thought, yes, wonderful. But there's something not right with that woman. And that came right from the time. Now, this business about the third child, Meghan actually joked about this in a way. It was a secret third child in the new season of her Netflix series, With Love Meghan, wasn't it? God, lovely title, With Love Meghan. I think she's a woman, don't have a lot of that, frankly. But it was a light-hearted moment. It wasn't an announcement, was it? It wasn't an announcement that she planned to do that. And if you look at Harry too, I mean, he previously said that he'd have two maximum of two children. He said he didn't want more because he claimed, that children. He claimed that he didn't want more children for environmental reasons. A stance that he's repeated over the years. So this is a bit a propagandary sort of thing, isn't it? And it's about more attention. When I say propagandary sort of thing, it's like getting a little bit of attention for the Meghan show, or something we can get a headline out of. So there's no actual real credible reporting that suggests that a Meghan is pregnant in 2025 or will be, but that's it. They're just rumors. Rumors are rumors, aren't they? So what's my prediction on this one with your question? Well, there's no evidence of a third baby on the way. I think the odds lean to no, unless the couple themselves say otherwise. But my original prediction did say that there would be talk of a new baby, and that did come true. So I got the talk of a new baby. You'll notice sometimes I word things carefully. But another prediction is their marriage is on the rocks. Often people look to a new baby or look to a new home when the marriage is in trouble. Can we solve our problems with a new baby? Can we solve our problems with a new home? We need a new start. So they try to find some way of kind of patching things up. I think there's a much, much deeper problem there than meets the eye. And also, I suppose I better mention about what you said about Trump, because yes, there has been some things about the postal ballots, and this was something I did speak about in my 2025 predictions made in October 2024. And President Trump has called for paper ballots only. He said that he'd use executive orders to mandate voter ID and to restrict mail voting. Mail voting, not mail, postal voting, I suppose a better word. But the US elections are run by the states, and the courts have already blocked parts of this in March 2025 elections order. So nationally, bringing back paper ballots isn't something a president can simply impose upon people. And also in the USA, mostly does use postal ballot, use paper ballots anyway. 98% of jurisdictions use this system. I believe it was California, wasn't it, where there was a lot of conflict about this, because it looked as if things were being manipulated by that. And I certainly think the postal ballots are something that needs to be sorted out, the postal ballots. So, and there was all the paper trails and the hand counting, everything is quite difficult. So the slogans here kind of outpace the reality in some ways. Anyway, so my prediction for this one. I said that last year that the USA would be entangled in legal disputes in 2025, didn't I? And I predict state-by-state fights, not a flip of national switch. And remember, paper records are already the norm. There's also talk of challenges to the application of tariffs. This could be a bigger problem, I think, and a bigger headache for Trump than he anticipates. So the next question sent in by you guys says this: can you see anything happening with Ireland, as we are struggling like yourselves with housing and immigration? Who do you think will be the next president, a man or a woman? Well, that's an interesting question, and I get lots of questions coming in from people from lots of the nations of the world, so do keep posting your questions on these type of things. Now, here in Britain, the public mood is becoming very anti-migration, and I can see our kind of very weak Labour government making moves to pass policies that will help them to stay in government. And even though these policies might be against their fundamental values, and these things may affect the number of people running across the border into Ireland. Now, here in the UK, there's talk of identity cards. There's talk of a crackdown on illegal working, and a lot of what I think is actually very hollow talk, actually, about empty and migrant hotels. And this may encourage people to cross the border, as I say, into Ireland, from Northern Ireland into Southern Ireland. But these aren't huge, strong policies that are going to make huge changes. But I do think there's a change of mood in the UK, and that might have frightened people out of the UK, actually, because things are definitely going to happen in the longer term. And there's a public mood change. And that same mood is happening in Europe, as I've said. It's happened already in America, and it's also happening in Ireland. The Irish people are beginning to feel despair at things. But the thing is, Ireland has multiple problems, because also the big companies are leaving on Trump's orders. And there's a huge housing crisis in Ireland. And when you look at the bloggers from Ireland, there's migrants sleeping all over the streets, all up the alleyways, all down the river banks, in tents. And this homelessness is an absolute catastrophe. I read that there were 16,000 homeless people in July in Ireland, and if what I read is right, over 5,000 children homeless. Madness, absolute madness. But how can a small country like Ireland ever support that number of people on the streets? You're not going to be able to house them. You have trouble enough housing your own people. And although there's going to be much more homes coming online, and I think that's already in the pipeline there, but you can't house everybody that knocks the door. It's unsustainable, and it will result in chaos. You know, Ireland has a frail economy at best, and it's become too dependent on foreign companies. If they leave, if there's a financial problems in Ireland, what the hell's going to happen to all these people on the streets? People are going to feel resentful because basic amenities are not getting paid for. The same thing's happening here in the UK. And I sense that the economy of Ireland is going to take a major tumble in the near future. And if this happens, there will be great resentment, tremendous resentment towards migrants. And this could turn people to vote for the right in politics. So to answer your question about the next president of Ireland, whether it's be a man or a woman, now, my feelings is if Fianna Fáil crowns Jim Gavin, the race will start to tilt in favour of males, because he's not committed yet. But I feel that would make an influence. But what do I see, though? What do I see? I see a very strong anti-immigration surge amongst voters. And a new candidate is going to emerge before October who will capture the public mood. And I sense that Ireland may well elect a woman as the next president of Ireland. Well, thanks for all your questions. Some brilliant ones there, and I could only cover a few of them. So do keep sending them in, because there were some brilliant ones in there today, and very well thought out, and so many others that I'd love to cover, and I will try to cover some more of those. But do keep sending them in. If you're on the public, you'll see I occasionally put up a post asking for questions, and I can take some of the questions from there. If you've if your question don't get asked the first time, just keep posting, please, and you'll find that eventually I'll hopefully get round to yours. As I know there's so many issues I'd like to be able to cover. And don't forget also, if you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe, because I'm going to put some more videos up like this, lots more coming up. And always give us that thumbs up. Don't forget to give us that thumbs up. So thanks for your questions today, and make a comment now. What do you think? What's your opinion about some of these things that have come up in the question section of the video today? Really interesting things there. What do you think? Where's it all going to go? What's going to happen? There's so many things. So your comments are very important. Now, don't forget, I'm also been working on this AI, and I've created an oracle. And I'm working on that oracle, and it will answer your questions. So if you'd like to go on the list to be one of the first to use it, please do see the link in the description, because that is something that I think you would thoroughly enjoy. So up next, we've got a short clip now coming up from Jane. Me and Jane at home. As you know, I quite like to divide these shows up into little sort of sections. So some of it appeals to some of you, some to others. But our at-home stuff can be quite fun sometimes. And here's Jane's been in the news recently. She's been in the psychic news. So I'm going to have a quick chat with her about that now. Oh, so what's that then?
Oh, I've just been sent Psychic News. I had an interview with the Psychic News, and it's quite lovely what they wrote, but it definitely came from the heart. But because people ask me, why does Craig wear orange scarves? And I do, but Craig had a wonderful gift from one of the patrons. I'll do from
Yes, here it is.
Sheila.
A lovely one. It came from India, and one of our patrons gave it to me, and actually had it go and blessed in one of the temples in was it Calcutta, isn't it? In a Ramakrishna temple. So there you go, lovely. Well, thank you, Sheila. So tell us a little bit. Well, tell us what's in here, Jane. Then this is Psychic News. Okay, Psychic News is that is the magazine we the Spiritualists. So what edition is that? That's
It's September the 1st.
So you can get it this month. I'll put a link in the description. Yeah. So what's the basis of the story?
Well, the basis of the story really is about our lives and how I became a medium and how I was guided by my granny, and also about how we work well together and how our lives are probably most different than some mediums because we live a spiritual life. And they were asking me questions, for example, how did you know you're a medium and that? And I put, obviously from a very young age, I felt a deep connection in my heart to help others. I wasn't looking to be a medium, but I had a wonderful grandmother that helped me to unlock my potential.
So what's Roger Moore doing in there? What's all that about? So it's got that bit about Roger Moore. What's all that? Oh. That's that story. I remember Roger Moore when we saw him in Harrods. Oh, I can tell this.
Yeah, well, we had to meet a friend in Harrods in the Georgian restaurant. And I remember Craig and I sat down. I said, there's Roger Moore over there. And Craig said, how do you know that's Roger Moore? I said, I know by the outline of him because I used to watch Roger Moore in Hiverno. And suddenly there was two girls that came into the restaurant and he thought they were going to him. He stood up, bowed his head, and they walked straight past him and came to me and Craig and said, Jane and Craig, may I have your autograph? And the look of absolute horror on his face.
Yeah, I know you had some of those, a number of celebrities, particularly on the cruises, didn't you? You had James Cagney, didn't you?
Well, I met James Cagney. He was quite an old man, and it tickled me because we're in by this cocktail bar. And he turned round to, what was his name? He was his partner that used to work in these films. He said, let's just ask the girls if they want to come up for a few drinks. And these girls were well in their 80s.
Yeah, well, he was pretty old at the time, I suppose, wasn't he? Is there any more on stories of that? I think people are quite interested in actually, Jane.
Well, yeah, I have met some people on there and I truly haven't recognised them. I won't go into their names. And there was quite a famous person, a famous singer, female, and people were coming up to me, and this woman came along and said, and who the hell are you, honey? I said, you really don't know who I am? Shame on you. And walked away. But most of the people, whether they're celebrities or everyday people, punk rock, it doesn't make any difference. It's just the person that matters.
Okay, so anyway, I think that sounds quite interesting, don't you? Go and have a look at Psychic News. I'll put a link in the description below, and you can subscribe to Psychic News. Really good for anybody that's interested in mediumship and spiritualism, particularly in the UK, but they'll also deliver in America and all around the world. So have a look in the description.
So that's it for this week, guys. Thank you for joining Coffee with Craig. Go and get your Coffee with Craig mug, perhaps, and join me for a sip of coffee, which I don't often do on the show, do I? But anyway, thank you. Next time we've got some interesting stuff coming up. I'm looking again into the NAADIs, and I've got a funny feeling there's something interesting there that I'm going to be able to show you next week. Something that seems to suggest that there could be a golden age about to be born. And maybe there are people here that might facilitate that in the future. So anyway, see you soon. See you next time. Bye for now.
If you look back at my earlier predictions, and in particular the predictions I made on the newspaper, The Sun's website, I did actually say on there, the actual words were, there will be a flu epidemic linked to bioterrorism.
And my thoughts are that Liz Truss will make it to the final, be the next PM. I think she will actually have a final battle between her and Rishi Sunak. We've not seen the full end of Boris Johnson either, I tell you. But Rishi Sunak actually will eventually, I feel, be the next leader of the Conservatives. So I think there's going to be a few conflicts that Britain's going to be drawn into, including I think Russia is going to take some moves against Ukraine. I think she will make it past her platinum jubilee, which comes up this year. But I think after that, we'll see a sudden and quick deterioration in the Queen's health. And I think we might lose the Queen towards the end of 2022. There's going to be a huge backlash from over the Netflix programs and screening, because I feel it comes out at a bad time. Charles will come to become King Charles, but his reign, I feel, will be short. I said that Prince Charles would be hit by an egg. And of course, there it is, all in the press today. Marvellous person she is. She does something extraordinary that could even put her life a little bit at risk with the way she did this. Okay. Is there something also there that's not been spoken about fully? Did they also discover something with Kate that wasn't quite right? A huge swarm of people knocking the doors of Europe and America. And I feel that Ukraine conflict is going to be a kind of a grinding conflict that goes on and on. I also feel that there's something going to happen in the Middle East as well. I feel as if there's going to be a sudden and unexpected thing happen in the Middle East. So I feel they're going to take it into their own hands, and I feel we're going to get a strike from Israel. This is going to be one of the significant things in 2023. I've said it before and I say it again. I feel Israel, with the help from the USA, will strike the Iranian nuclear facilities. I said that there would be an earthquake that would shake New York. At this time, I've been sensing that for a while that there's going to be a big earthquake of some sort. And this could well come up during April period. I'm seeing a bridge collapsing, actually the whole infrastructure of it going. I predict something very dark happens to President Joe Biden. He's been pulled from power, sacked, as it were, and quite close to the election time. But I kind of sense it's more to do with illness, perhaps, senility, and people stopping him because of that. So it could even be that a new candidate will run for the presidential nominee. I predict that Trump will win the November 2024 election. And I feel very strongly that the black vote is going to move towards Trump. See him as a sort of a bit of a cool guy. I can't see Trump being put in jail despite what they're throwing at him. I can't see a jail sentence with him. But I get the feeling one of the candidates has an attempt on the candidate's life. Could there have been a plan to assassinate either him or Trump, perhaps? There's going to be an assassination attempt on Trump, I think. and that will fail, but he might maybe get wounded or something like that. A hit or attack on our airplanes, on maybe on passenger flights or even freight flights, because I also had at a similar time I was also seeing this image of helicopters on fire as well. I seem to see like the west of America on fire and the east of America underwater, huge winds. And I actually saw, just like we had a major problem here in the UK where a tower block went up on fire, I see a tower block deserted. In Sweden, I saw Stockholm, and I saw the ship there. I think it's called Vasa, and I felt as if there was an attempt to try to set that boat on fire. And there will be mass layoffs. He's going to do to the government what he did to X, which is basically, let's pretty much sack everybody and let's re-employ those that are any good. I feel that Musk and Trump ultimately fall out. So I predict that they'll have a major fallout in the end. And more government control in cryptocurrencies. And, you know, I saw this image as well of the Eiffel Tower against the backdrop of burning Paris. Is there a big fire in Paris? That this year I saw big earthquake coming. Now, could that be coming soon? Could that be also coming soon on top of this? Because that was what I was seeing before. And you know, like I say, like that Santa Monica where I thought the pier was going up on fire, that was obviously symbolic perhaps of Santa Monica going up on fire, because the fires are right on the doorstep of Santa Monica, is that there's going to be a major earthquake around both sides of the Pacific Rim. But it is like that. I felt as if there was something, a big plate move that affected right over from America to Japan.